What is going on, good people? We're here to break down the Turkey Day games. The 6 teams on screen here playing on Thanksgiving Day, and just those players. Projections talk about what we expect. Green Bay at Detroit, Washington, Dallas, San Francisco, and the Seattle Seahawks. The Fantasy Football Show begins right now.
From the FantasyFootballShow.com studios, it's the Fantasy Football Show.
Okay, so to kick this off, I want to first talk about the two pieces of news relating to this Green Bay-Detroit game. Musgrave, laceration in the kidney, on injured reserve. That's horrible timing for fantasy football playoff hopes because people have been losing Andrews and other tight ends, and now all of a sudden Musgrave's out, who was a great replacement for a lot of people who lost Andrews. So he's going on IR. That's horrible news, not only for this game, but for fantasy football owners everywhere. Prayers up to him. Aaron Jones is unlikely to play week 12, so Dylan's going to get more run. How much run? We'll see what we think here. But having two big components of this offense out is not good. I will say, and maybe we start off with the Detroit Lions side of the football here. This being a game I think is going to be controlled on the ground, which is great news for Monty and Gibbs. I think St. Brown still has a day. I think Goff is pretty efficient. Sometimes these games seem to go different than you project. You think it's going to be a good ground game, and then they throw the hell out of the ball. So we'll take a look at that. But let's start off with Monty and say he feels pretty safe for, like, I would say a 100-yard game on the ground. I'll say we'll call it 100 rushing. We'll call it 20 receiving. We'll call it 1 touchdown. That's going to be Monty's line in week number 12 on Turkey Day. And this guy right here, Jahmyr Gibbs, let's call it 95 yards rushing. Let's call it 55 receiving. We'll call it 4 receptions for the 55 yards and 1 total touchdown, which will be a nice little afternoon for Jahmyr Gibbs. 95, 55. That is an amazing little 150-yard game for Jahmyr Gibbs. Let's ink that in, lock it in. Then we'll go over to, let's see, St. Brown. Yeah, we'll say St. Brown we'll give him a tutty. So we got 3 touchdowns total so far. TD, we'll call it 6 receptions for 85 yards and 1 TD. So we'll put it like that. That'll be St. Brown's line in week number 12 on Turkey Day at home against the Green Bay Packers. Not sure how I feel about Laporta right now. He feels like he's in a little bit of a rut, and we'll call it 4 to 5 receptions, and we'll say he pulls in 65 yards. I don't think that's horrible. I just feel like he is in a little bit of a rut. I think this is going to go more in favor of the Monty Gibbs St. Brown direction in week number 12. But you never know. Definitely don't sit Laporta. He's certainly still a top 10 tight end. Certainly still capable of getting like a 90-yard touchdown performance on any given Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, occasionally Fridays. He's certainly capable of doing that. And Goff, Goff coming off kind of a poor performance, I think still has, we'll call it like 240 yards, 2 TDs. I think he probably has 1 INT in this one. I think he looks a lot better. I think his offense being in control, running the ball is going to make him more efficient. Wouldn't even be surprised if this is more along the lines of like 220, something along that territory, but that's kind of the way I'm feeling. Jameson, let's call Jameson 40 yards. I certainly believe Jamo's got the potential and upside to do more than that, but we're going to cap it there. Now, Love, we're going to say Love's throwing from behind in this game, which doesn't bode well for Dylan. But Dylan's going to get work. We'll call Dylan 65 yards. I don't know, 50-50 shot to maybe score, maybe 20 receiving. Not a bad yardage performance, but one of those games where it's like the yardage is kind of there, but the points it doesn't feel like a great fantasy outing. Again, Aaron Jones is going to be out for this one. Watson scored a touchdown last week, broke the seal. I think he does have something along the lines of 70 and a touchdown. That would be for Watson. I think he's been getting touchdown opportunities every single game. Like if you go back and watch literally like every single game throughout the entire season, he's getting 1 to 2 end zone targets. He's in the end zone deflected pass, defender makes a strong play, or Love places the ball in a bad spot. Watson has dropped a couple, but it hasn't been as many as you'd think. It's more been bad luck and bad football placement. But Love without Aaron Jones and Love without Musgrave is going to be probably a struggling Jordan Love in this game. So we'll give Watson that 70 and a tutty, but Reed we'll call 70 and a TD as well. I think he's capable of even something along the lines of like 90 total yards if we're going to throw in a rushing attempt, something like that. So for the most part, I think Love could get to that 2 touchdown mark, which you'd think, oh, that's a great day. But I could also see a 2 to 3 INT performance, and let's call it like a 245 yardage. At the end of the day, it's not horrible if he can get you 2 scores in 245, but it does depend on, this could be 2 or 3 interceptions in this game. That's my assessment of this team right here. I do believe the Lions will rout them at the end of it all. It'll just be Green Bay trying to throw the ball at the end of the game, and the Detroit Lions just running the hell out of the football through these two gentlemen, especially this man, Jahmyr Gibbs. Have I explained to you why Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 5 to 10 running back instead of top 6 to 10? Have I showed you the science before? But the continuum of the gigawatt component structure of Jahmyr Gibbs's workload divide has a megawatt offload that if you compartmentalize the component conjunction timekeeper and you flux capacitor out the continuum component megabolt, things just end up happening. And that's why Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 5 to 10 running back instead of top 6 to 10. This man, Jahmyr Gibbs, he looks better than Kamara looked coming out of college, more prepared to become Kamara. Smitty, did you just say Gibbs was more prepared to become Kamara than Alvin Kamara was prepared to become Kamara? No. And now on to Washington, Dallas, baby. So this game's going to be a little different because this is a tough Dallas defense, and they're looking really, really hungry right now to score and create opportunities. And Howell, while he's played very well this year, one of our biggest super flex like breakouts, we're talking about second quarterbacks. You're looking deep into a draft and trying to stockpile second and third rounders on non-QBs and Superflex. This guy Howell was sitting there, and he's been in the top like 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks, depending on your scoring all year long. But this is a tough matchup, and Howell's coming off a really, really bad, I believe he had 3 INTs, week 11 performance, and things are not going to get any easier. So I'd probably say Howell's looking at something along the lines of like a 240, 2 INT, at least, maybe 3. Well, you know what? Let's just put it on here so that the possibility is there. 2 to 3 INTs, 240. Wouldn't shock me if he had 0 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown because he is so dynamic on the ground with his legs, and we'll call it like 20 rushing yards. Not a good. I'm knocking everything over here. Not a good performance out of Howell in this one, and this is gonna trigger and cascade on down to these other positions here. So B-Rob's been very effective catching massive amounts of yardage in the PPR game. I would say like a 20 to 30 yard receiving type of affair. 0 receiving touchdowns. Obviously, Howell didn't throw one in the projection up above. So, 25 rushing yards, 20 to 30 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 to 3 receptions, and that's going to be it for B-Rob in this matchup, in my opinion. Gibson, kind of a similar line, maybe less rushing yards, maybe call it 10 to 15 rushing yards, and then zero total touchdowns, maybe 3 to 4 receptions for 15 to 20 yards, and no touchdowns. Very, very bad outing for Gibby and for B-Rob. McLaurin, maybe he gets you 5 to 6 receptions for 65 yards, no tutties. Dotson, maybe something very similar. Dotson, 5 to 6 receptions for 60, 65 yards. Logan Thomas, maybe 3 to 4 receptions for 35 yards. This is going to be a bad fantasy football outing for this Washington Commander team. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. This is the NFL. Could some crazy sort of turnover fest trigger some sort of solid play? And who the hell knows? An injury. but this is a tough Dallas defense. And I think what ends up happening in this game, Dowdle, the backup running back in Dallas, is banged up right now, which is really, I don't want to say good news. We never celebrate injury. I don't mean it like that, but it's good news for Pollard that he gets a shot to kind of really take all the work on in this one. And I believe because of the game script here, we're looking at 100 total rushing yards, 100 rushing yards out of Pollard in this one. We're looking at 1 TD. Maybe this will be a double touchdown game for him. We're also looking at maybe 3 to 4 receptions for about at least 25 yards. And even if this was like, let's say 95 yards on the ground, something like that, 95 yards, this could be a like 30, 35 receiving yard affair for him. Any way we shake it, we could even look at it like this and just say, let's give him 120 total yards and 1 touchdown. And call it 3 to 4 receptions. I think that's going to be a great day for Pollard. Game will be controlled on the ground. Defense, rushing attack. Maybe no Dowdle, we'll see. But Pollard to the freaking moon in this game. I think it's a really solid game for him. Dak, I think, still does some damage, even though the ground game and the defense will be controlling everything. You're still looking at probably something along the lines of Dak probably we'll call it 2 TDs for Dak. We'll call it 260 passing, and we'll say 0 INTs. So we got 2 touchdowns to work with for these wide receivers and pass catchers here. And so that'll put, let's say, lamb chops in we'll call it 90 yards and a touchdown. And reception-wise, let's give them 6. 6 receptions, 90, and a touch. That'd be a good day for lamb chops. Wouldn't shock me if he had 100, 110, 120, but we'll put him in that category. Fergie, let's call it 3 receptions, 30 yards, and 1 TD. He seems to be finding the end zone, and I think that's a solid line. And so for Cooks, let's call Cooks something along the lines of, 5 receptions for 55 yards and call it a day. That's my projection for this game right here. Biggest takeaway, Pollard will feel like he's back. Lamb will continue to do what Lamb does. And now we move on to San Francisco, Seattle. Oh, and Gallup, we'll call Gallup 3 for 33. I don't know, it just came to me. To kick off the Seattle and Niner contest here, it's important to note that Kenny Walker is doubtful for Week 12, so we're going to put a red line through him. Don't expect him to play in this one. Charbonnet will be the lead dog, and while I do believe this is not a very great matchup for Charbonnet, this is a top 10 rushing defense, and they're really probably better than that. They rank somewhere around there, but because they struggled for a grip of time as this defense started to find itself, and Wilkes was doing an awful job, they moved him down to the field. They brought in Chase Young. Things have turned around, so I think they're playing much better as a whole. Passing defense, rushing defense, all sides of this thing have been improved over the last couple of weeks. So their rank, I don't think, sufficiently tells the story about what kind of defense you're going to face from week to week when you go up against the Niners going forward. But I'd say Walker very much being out is very much a good thing for Charbonnet's ability to, I think, get in a rhythm. And I think that even though this is one of the tougher matchups, Char probably still finds a way to get like 70 yards and 70 total yards, we'll call it. And that's not amazing, but I think he's got like a 50%. I don't want to put a full tutty on here. I'm going to say he has a 50% chance at a TD. We'll call this a 0.5 touchdown. That's the first time I've done this on the projection. 0.5 touchdown. It's a tough matchup, and really the game script is going to determine whether he's able to be utilized enough in the running attack, and if he's not, they throw to him, but will he have a lot of room to navigate? Tough to say. I'd say this is Charbonnet is the one player where I feel like no matter what, they're probably going to try and use him a lot, passing to him, throwing to him, running the football early on in the game if they can. So he'll be pretty involved the entire game, but this is a tough matchup. I think DK and Lockett, who have been removed from the injury report, by the way, I think both these guys end up having kind of a similar line. Maybe it just comes down to who gets the touchdown, if there is one to be even had. I would say that DK ends up pulling in, let's say DK gets you 70 yards on 5 receptions and a TD. I'm going to say Lockett gets you that 5 and 70-ish without the touchdown. That's going to be TJ Lockett's line, and JSN will be something along the lines of like 5 for 55. It's not going to be a good game. Gino's probably looking at at least a 2 to 3 INT day. This is for Gino. And I don't know that he's going to have more than like 230, 240 and the 1 TD. And he's playing banged up anyway. If for any reason there's some sort of negative news, this goes in the wrong direction for Gino, who's, questionable but likely to play. We'll have an update on that on the show, but not going to be a good day for the Seahawks, in my opinion. I think they get completely blasted to pieces by this 49ers unit that is playing very, very solid football on all sides and all facets of the football. Let's start off with Purdy and say he has a 240, 2 TD, 0 INT performance, probably some rushing yards in there. We'll call it like 255 total yards, okay, is what he's going to have. That is for Purdy. I think McCaffrey's going to have, we'll get to the wide receivers in a second. McCaffrey's going to have 110 total yards and 1 TD, potentially 2. I'd say we'll call it, we'll do this. We didn't do this with the other 2 matchups, but we'll call this 1.5 TDs. I think he's got a really strong shot at having a 2 touchdown performance. We'll call it 1.5 TDs, 110 total yards, maybe 125 total yards, and probably 3 or 4 receptions, I'd say. Let's call Debo 85 total yards because, hard to know if he's going to run for, catch one of those behind the line of scrimmage, behind Brock Purdy type of catches, take it as an actual counted rush. 85 total yards, 1 TD, we'll call it 5 to 6 receptions. And let's put it 95 total yards out of Debo Samuel, 5 to 6 receptions, 1 TD. Ayuk, I'm going to call it, we'll call it 6 for 90 and 1 TD. George Kittle, we'll call it 5 for 65. I know people want a touchdown here, but I'm going to say they go to Ayuk and Debo. And we'll say Eli Mitchell has about 30 total yards. That's my assessment here. Now, hey, Smitty, where are all these points? You say they're going to rout the Seahawks. You only gave me 4 touchdowns, which is a lot, which is plenty, actually. But I think I just marked on my chair. I think this defense is scoring at least 1 touchdown. San Francisco DST, at least 1 TD. I think this San Francisco defense probably scores in the standard defensive scoring format, something along 20 to 22 points for the San Francisco DST, and they're going to be the defense of the Thursday games. That's my assessment, and of course anything can happen. This is football. It's really hard to get all these projections right, but this is my assessment of the 3 Turkey Day games. Keep in mind also, for anybody else wondering about, there's some potential concern that Dillon is also questionable. So they brought in James Robinson. Who knows if James Robinson will get any run? I'm not particularly interested in James Robinson, but I know a lot of people will probably comment and say, hey, Smitty, what do you think about James Robinson being brought in? I don't think much about him. I very rarely remember he's even either in the NFL or capable of being in the NFL. Now, because I said that, he's probably going to have a big day, so you might want to pick him up and start him. But Emmanuel Wilson was the potential backup in Green Bay who went on IR. So James Robinson was added to the active roster because Dillon's questionable, but Dillon is expected to play. James Robinson will probably get some run, but it's not something I expect to be helpful to anybody in week number 12. So happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a good Turkey Day.